praise to the Creator, nobody else. Peace and love, everyone. Let's give the Creator some praise. So today, I'm going to expose Mother Teresa for who she really was. And good job, Brother Flo, who sent me this. But also we're going to talk about something that y'all need to know. Yes, if you look at the very top of your screen here, you can see that there's more portals opened up. I would show this video. But here's the thing. It's a boring video. It has no music or nothing, and it's just clearly silent. And a person must have did it on purpose, but they do capture this image right here, which is a portal opening up. The same thing like the ones they seen in Egypt. Didn't I tell you all this? So it started from the right side of the top of the screen in this frame and went to the left side and stopped there. They are opening up portals everywhere. Fair warning. We're gonna get to Mother Teresa, her evil butt, in a minute, how evil she was. But first, let's talk about food shortages.
Fight the climate emergency. Strengthen our local economy.
And I got 3 words.
Our health. Take action now.
File your taxes free.
Food shortages.
Your way. Do it yourself. Free. Get unlimited advice from
say
tax experts.
Order.
Hello, YouTubers. Alaska Prepper.
Go to the wilderness. Canned goods, supplies, seeds, and water. Those are the words we're going to use, because to survive this is what you're going to need. And if you in them cities, you better get out and get this going as soon as you can. Because I'm telling you what, it's going to be chaos, especially if Russia and Ukraine goes to war, and your government tried to start a war with Russia. They already got troops over in Ukraine, but they had a newspaper publish a lie talking about Russia just attacked Ukraine. But guess what? They didn't. And Russia debunked it as soon as it came out and said, we didn't attack them, we chilling right here, man. Why y'all stop lying? Then a news reporter had to backtrack a story and say, oh no, it was a mistake. No, y'all thought y'all was going to propaganda and then freaking make Russia get mad and it was going to fall for your trick and then have everybody's jump in the war when there wasn't no war started yet. Y'all still trying to start one, evil ass America. Stop the buffoonery. But y'all know around the world, y'all doing a organized famine. And you know that's going to twist the ties on China and Russia and everybody else to look for war to feed their people. And there's a book that says, and I know I read that they will look for spoil. They will look for farmland. Why? Because the organized drought, the Rothschild, Bilderberg, aristocrats, Jesuits, New World Order, and more, you damn ugly Freemasons, because y'all nothing but puppets anyway, are helping to bring about Let's get this going, shall we?
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've talked about this before, but I want you to hear this from Mr. Snyder. Because I'll tell you what, this gentleman is extremely intelligent and smart. And he can articulate what's about to come a lot better than I can. And he doesn't get as emotional as I do as well. All right, so Mr. Snyder says skyrocketing fertilizer prices could spark widespread global famines, unlike anything that we've seen in modern history. This is serious, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm talking about it so much. Because we need fertilizer. In this era that we live in, we need fertilizer in order to grow enough food. I am going to try to make as much noise.
That's right, because if not, there'll be a famine. And there was a brother who actually said something in front of Congress and said, what are we going to do? We got to fix this problem. And they shut him down. They shut him down because they already had this plan for a planned famine.
About this crisis as I can, because we have never faced anything like this in modern times. Global fertilizer prices have tripled, and we are being warned that this is going to have a catastrophic impact on food production all over the world. We here in the United States, and I know I have community members here in the Alaska Prepper community from all over the world, but we here in the United States are not immune to this, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to understand, and wherever you live, you are not immune to this. Only because it has not happened in your lifetime doesn't mean that it cannot happen. So stock up now. Today is the best day for you to go out there and stack it to the rafters, because in my opinion, in my humble opinion, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to need your preps in your lifetime. On Monday, an article that I wrote about this went viral all over the internet. And the reason why the article is so popular is because the corporate media in the United States is largely ignoring this story. But it should be front page news all over the country, because this is going to affect every person in the entire planet. I don't know if you all remember, those of you that have been with me for a while. I think it was about a year ago. I'll try to find that clip. About a year ago, where they were having a Senate hearing, and a senator said, or he asked a question, what are we going to do to support the farmers, because we are going to have food shortages? And then he was cut off. They didn't want to listen to what he was saying because they didn't think it's important enough.
Secretary Mnuchin, none of the lending facilities established have targeted the needs of our agriculture industry. Now, why do I mention that? Food. It's coming. I mean, I can't see why people can't see this crisis. Food shortages are coming.
Some experts did warn us about this in advance. For example, a European CEO told the media the following all the way back in November. He said, I want to say this loud and clear right now, that we risk very low crops in the next harvest. And he says, I'm afraid we're going to have a food crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, we are being warned. As I've told you in the past, you and I, the layman, the person that actually produces something, we will be the last to know. The media may be touting food shortages and things like that, because if they put out the real information, people are going to panic, and they're going to go out there and panic buy. So you are in the know. You are in the minority, ladies and gentlemen. You are in the know as to why it is that we are going to have a food shortage and how severe it is going to be. So take advantage of the information. Of course, do your own research. I trust Mr. Snyder very much, and I trust that what he's getting, the sources he's getting it from, are good sources. There's not very many things that he's talked about in the past that haven't come to pass. And he continues to say that food crises are coming because the cost to produce a ton of ammonia has gotten nearly 10 times higher. In Europe, the natural gas benchmark hit an all-time high in September, with the price more than tripling from June to October alone. Yara is a major producer of ammonia, a key ingredient in synthetic fertilizer, which increases crop yields. The process of creating ammonia currently relies on hydropower or natural gas. To produce a ton of ammonia last summer, it was $110, and now it's $1,000. So that is a 10 times increase in its original price. He says that in order to fix this, we need to solve the global energy crisis. Food is energy, ladies and gentlemen. Everything that goes into food, into the production of food, into the growing of food, it is all energy. We are all energy.
I am Butch Loxton. I'm a Los Angeles-based artist. I'm inspired by the Day of the Dead culture here in Los Angeles. I seem to connect with a lot of fans in Mexico. I have a lot of fans in India and also in Europe. So I would say connecting on Facebook is limitless.
Learn about crypto and get paid as you learn with Coinbase Earn. We've paid out over $100 million in crypto rewards since Coinbase Earn launched in 2018. To start earning, just watch short videos, answer simple questions about what you've seen, and get rewarded. Get started today on Coinbase.com/earn.
Unfortunately, as I have been repeatedly warning my readers, the global energy crisis is only going to get worse. Did you all see the price of oil this Friday? I think it topped like $90-something, and it's going to continue to go up. So we have a really, really big mess on our hands. In Africa, many farmers are not going to be able to afford fertilizer at all this year, and it is being projected that this will reduce production by enough to feed 100 million people. And ladies and gentlemen, I read somewhere that in North Korea, the government has mandated to its citizens that they are to collect their own bodily wastes so that they can use their own bodily wastes as fertilizer. That's how bad it's going to get. With prices tripling over the past 18 months, many farmers are considering whether to forego purchases of fertilizer this year. That leaves a market long touted for its growth potential to shrink by almost a third. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we have a third less fertilizer for food production, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get a third less food, but it'll be close to that, maybe 20% less. Can the world right now, and this is the question, can the world forego 20% of the food production that we produce right now? If we have a 20% reduction in the production of food stuff, people are going to starve. And my question to you is this: do you want to be one of them? Or do you want to give up your sovereignty, your freedom, to an entity that has already hoarded the food and that supposedly has the power to confiscate and nationalize farms and granaries and all of these things? Do you want to give up your sovereignty to an entity like that because you failed to prepare today? He continues to say here that the reduction in fertilizer could potentially curb output of cereals by 30 million tons. To make sure that their people won't starve, African governments will need to import massive amounts of food from elsewhere. The question is, from where? We are likely to see a scenario where yields are depressed, and this will mean that either the government will have to readjust their budgets and import food, or there will be food shortages. Now, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourselves this question. If there is a physical shortage of food, how much paper is it going to cost to get that food? I'll go ahead and quote Christian from the Ice Age Farmer, and he says, the government can print all the money they want, but they cannot print food. Only because they print money, it doesn't mean that food will magically appear because they print money. Incredible. But agricultural production is going to be way down all over the globe. So almost everyone is going to be looking to import food, and there won't be a lot of exporters. Many of you may not realize this, but the food crisis has already become quite severe in some parts of Africa. And this person that works as the World Food Program's manager in Madagascar said that drought had this year reduced the harvest to 1/3 of the average of the past 5 years. Where families had once had comfortable meals, children are now subsisting on foraged plants and cactus leaves. How would you feel if your children were eating plants and leaves just to survive? Ask yourselves that question, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, this is just the beginning. As I have warned for a very long time, we will soon get to a point where there is not nearly enough food for everyone. What are we going to do then? And if Russia and Ukraine go to war, that will take this crisis to a completely different level and very rapidly. A major casualty could be even higher food prices. Ukraine and Russia together are heavyweights in global wheat, corn, and sunflower oil trade, leaving buyers from Asia to Africa and the Middle East vulnerable to more expensive bread and meat if supplies are disrupted. That would add to food commodity costs that are already the highest in a decade. Food costs are going to get a lot higher. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to make a prediction right now, okay? And it's not something that I came up with. It's just a prediction from everything that I've seen, from all of the different experts talk about all the different problems that we're seeing. Commodity prices, and when I say commodity prices, we're talking like food, fuel, things that we need to live, all right, are going to skyrocket for the next generation. For the next 10, 20 years, commodity prices will skyrocket. If I was a betting man, if I was a stock market guy, that's what I would be investing my money in right now. I just happen to not be one. And I'm not a financial advisor, so do your homework. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying that commodity prices are going to go up and continue to go up for at least the next generation, at a minimum 10, 20 years. Markets may be remembering what happened in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and wheat prices jumped even though shipments weren't substantially affected. Russia and Ukraine's share of the world exports has increased since, with nations like Egypt and Turkey relying on the Black Sea breadbasket. He goes on to say that even without war, global food prices just keep going higher and higher and higher. In fact, global grain prices have risen approximately 70% since the middle of 2020. And he finishes it off, ladies and gentlemen, by saying, sadly, most people don't realize that this is happening because the mainstream media is not talking about it. But eventually, everyone is going to be talking about this, ladies and gentlemen. They did a study on starvation. I think it was like after World War II, either after World War II or after the Korean War. Don't remember. But they took, several gentlemen and they put them in a camp, in an army camp, I think it was. And they fed them a starvation diet for, I think it was a couple of months, right? You can look at it. I actually did a video on this probably over a year ago. But one of the things that one of the gentlemen said in his diary is that after a certain number of days, all that they could think about and or talk about was food. That's all they could think about or talk about was food. And they were still being fed, but just a very low calorie diet. This is going to be the talk of the town eventually, ladies and gentlemen. We will revert to a time when things were scarce. And the problem with that is that most people in this generation have never really gone without. I mean, really gone without, including myself. I'm not sitting here telling you this, like preaching it to you like I've gone through it. I haven't. But most people have never really gone without. Even the poorest of the poor here in the United States live a higher standard of living than a lot of the middle class throughout the world. There is no way out, and global food supplies are going to get tighter and tighter. I would act on this information while you still can. Unfortunately, he says, the vast majority of the population is going to be absolutely blindsided by what is coming. And with that, I agree 100%. Most people rather live in a state of cognitive dissonance and believe everything that they are told by their government and the media and not do a little bit of their own research. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you, do your own research. Take a look at what's going on. Not only are we in a cycle that dictates that we are going to be in crisis mode for several years to come. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are also in a cycle that says, looking at history, that food production will drop. I won't bring the sun into this, but we are in a grand solar minimum. We are starting into a grand solar minimum right now, right? And that in itself will affect food production. And now we have all of these other factors jumping in there, right? Like no fertilizer, right? The weather is getting colder. All of the geopolitical strife that's going on in the world. You know, government overreach and policies that they're enacting that are actually, not allowing people to produce. All of these things are coming together, and if you're not prepared, people are not going to be able to help you because most people will not be prepared. So if you're not prepared, then get ready to go without, right? Live like you're going without now. That way you can get used to it. And I'm not being sarcastic, it's true. Having said that, have a great day. I wasn't going to be doing any videos, starting today, but it's...
If I'm just told the truth, they literally made farms burn their crops and they pay them money to do it. Now they go and destroy not one, but two, but three different fertilizer plants at different times. 2 this year, and I think a year back was another one. We'll get to that in a later date. Declassified files. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a later date, y'all. Matter of fact, just so you know I'm not lying, there we go. Sent it to myself. Alright, now let's get to the thing that is at hand. So, many people don't want to do research, they'd rather just trust the government. Well, didn't your government tell you Mother Teresa was a good guy?
There are two types of lizard or reptilian kind of being.
Mother Teresa, or should we now say Saint,
was a good person. How about they lied? Some of the orphanages and stuff like that, so they can get y'all kids, black kids, and any other kid they can get to put their hands on to rape them. Your Mother Teresa was just like Oprah Winfrey, passing the kids on to the pedophiles. Just like Winfrey got a secret school, and the freaking nasty people that work at that school be raping the black children. I know we don't call ourselves that, but I'm just trying to drive a point that when they say something good, it's always bad, right?
Angel. Soon after that, he wrote a book, The Missionary Position, Mother Teresa in Theory and Practice. This man certainly had a bee in his bonnet when it came to the Lady of Light. The overarching critique is that Mother Teresa and her sisters received millions upon millions of dollars to do God's work, and didn't do a very good job. It's important to say God's work and not just volunteer work. In fact, many people criticized her charities, saying that even with untold billions, they were run by people who could not provide adequate care. Pain relief was seldom given to anyone, and professional medical personnel were not often seen in the thrum of volunteers who didn't really know what they were doing. Still, for the public in the West who watched her on TV, they only saw a saint. For those who donated money, it was like doing good in the eyes of God. That can, of course, have...
They saw a saint, that woman. That woman was having reused needles and only cleaning them with cold water and injecting them people, getting folks more sicker.
Certain benefits come Judgment Day. You see, during the medieval period, there was something called indulgences. In short, a person could buy their way out of hell, or at least get a few of their sins scratched off of God's ethereal chalkboard. Critics believed Mother Teresa was selling indulgences, and to them it was kind of a con. Here's what Hitchens said about that. This returns us to the medieval corruption of the church, which sold indulgences to the rich while preaching hellfire and continence to the poor. Mother Teresa was not a friend of the poor. She was a friend of poverty. She said that suffering was a gift from God. Hitchens said he once got to talk with her face to face, and she told him outright that she wasn't trying to get rid of poverty, that she was certainly not a social worker. Her mission was to create more Catholics in the world and expand the Catholic Church. He and others argued that she was never going to try to fix poverty or lessen some of the pains that came with it. How could she be? They said her facilities were badly run, and they did not focus on methods of poverty reduction in terms of education or empowerment of women. In 2010, long after the so-called Angel of Mercy had passed away, a writer from Forbes visited one of the missions of charity and said what she found were volunteers and other people questioning what exactly was going on down there. The article said those places had always been resistant to change, and things had been done the way Mother Teresa wanted them done, which was most of the time volunteers doing jobs that they were not trained to do. The writer said, missionaries has always kept change at bay, but in a world where it is very difficult to hide behind secrecy, the number of disillusioned followers is increasing. She interviewed one of those volunteers, a guy from the United States, who went over to India to do some good. It should be mentioned here that the volunteers don't get any say in the running of the places, nor do they have any idea about all the money coming in and where it goes. This particular volunteer expressed surprise at what he first discovered over the first few days. In his own words, he said, "I was shocked to see negligence. Needles were washed in cold water and reused, and expired medicines were given to the inmates. There were people who had a chance to live if given proper care." So again, people have asked about how so much cash can do so little. But that volunteer said in no time at all he witnessed someone needlessly dying. He said another volunteer without any medical training had tried to feed a paralyzed person, but he did it wrong and that person died. He said he also saw someone having a toe amputated and not being given any kind of anesthetic. Yet another volunteer said she saw in one facility syringes run under cold water and reused, aspirin given to those with terminal cancer, and cold baths given to everyone. Mother Teresa allowed no criticism of such practices. People countered such criticism, saying, hey, these places are the home to the sick, the poor, the dying. They're not a hospital. Okay, state the naysayers, fine, but why not offer some real medical expertise with all that cash? As you'll soon see, the money donated was not exactly pennies. And what about the ones who recovered? Surely there should be some sort of rehabilitation going on to help them when they're ready to leave. One European volunteer said sometimes people left of their own accord, but other times they were forced back into the streets with no help or guidance as to how to survive. For that reason, they might soon be back. In this respect, it almost sounds like the prison system in many countries and their revolving doors. Some of them would rather not have empty beds. In the world of perpetual poverty, there's the term the charitable industrial complex. Mother Teresa had been accused of being part of that, perhaps even a lodestone. That same volunteer we just mentioned said one woman was very sick with diabetes, and then she was gone. The sister said she'd been placed in another facility, but a few days later the volunteer saw her back on the streets. Still, she couldn't walk right. There are numerous reports of money being donated to certain missionaries of charity facilities, but not much of that money being seen. A German report going all the way back to 1991 said that only 7% of the donated cash actually appeared at the place it was donated to. Okay, so where is that missing money? No one knows, but Forbes points out that it's controlled by the Vatican now that Mother Teresa is resting in peace. One of the people who should know as well as anyone about what Mother Teresa did was Dr. Arup Chatterjee. He grew up in Calcutta, and while studying to be a doctor was one of the few voices shouting about the terrible state of the poor. He did this shouting from the slums. He later went over to the UK, where he said he was shocked by the British adulation of Mother Teresa. She was indeed portrayed as a saint, although when he was campaigning in the slums back in India, he said he never saw any of the sisters. He later wrote about what he called a cult of suffering, and spent much of his time trying to understand how, if at all, Mother Teresa and her gang of sisterly angels were helping the poor. He spoke with many people who worked closely with the sisters, which concluded with him writing a book, Mother Teresa, The Final Verdict. Maybe some people don't trust his verdict, but he was arguably in a very good position to deliver one. In an interview, he said, I spent months in libraries in London. I also traveled the world researching it. I followed slum dwellers, beggars, destitute children with a video camera. I interviewed hundreds of people. I stood with a video camera outside Teresa's home for hours. And his verdict was, Mother Teresa, or the idea of her great, brilliant, immutable goddess, was bogus. He talked about the sorry state of the facilities he visited, the lack of hygiene, the needless deaths, and of course the baptisms that were given to people on their deathbeds without their consent. Even worse, he said when Mother Teresa claimed her Nobel Peace Prize, she was quick to state how she'd saved the lives of tens of thousands of people in India. Well, after Chatterjee did his research, he said you could possibly give her the number 700. Which isn't a lot, considering the many millions of dollars she received. His research also found that in Calcutta, the Missionaries of Charity was giving very little help in terms of food and water compared to most other charities. In some countries, help was hardly given at all, and conversion to Christianity was what was really going on. But the media loved her, of course. Many of you were likely not alive when she was, but rest assured she was hardly ever off the TV. Politicians could get brownie points for shaking her hand, while fraudsters, dictators, and other very bad people were only too happy to appear on with her before the flashing cameras. Speaking of politicians, Bill Clinton made her an honorary citizen of the US because she showed how we can make real our dreams for a just and good society. Everyone wanted a piece of her. It was as if she had received a television canonization, which Chatterjee ascribes mostly to the US media. This was happening, he says, while the most vulnerable people in India were still not getting the help they needed. The New York Times caught up with him fairly recently, and for the most part, he said what we've already told you, minus the blanket stained with feces washed in the same sink used to clean dishes. He said at least nowadays the missionaries of charity do have medical professionals that come in, and when things are bad for people, they're taken to a hospital. Back in the day, he said he struggled to explain the myth of her to the people of Calcutta. They weren't interested when he expressed that the miracles people claimed she performed were perhaps not miracles at all. He wasn't exactly popular for his opinions. Mother Teresa was finally made a saint in 2016 for allegedly healing a man with a brain tumor. Thousands upon thousands of people around the world wept tears of joy. Chatterjee's contention that this was more hocus pocus and fell on many deaf ears in the West. He concluded his chat with the Times saying, "They don't care about whether a third world city's dignity or prestige has been hampered by an Albanian nun. So obviously they may be interested in the lies and the charlatans and the fraud that's going on, but the whole story they're not interested in." On top of all of this, she was known to move with some very sketchy people, including neo-fascists in Italy and a dictatorship in Argentina whose members were later convicted of genocide and other crimes against humanity. Her friend in Haiti, Jean-Claude Duvalier, was accused of torture and genocide. She received millions from fraudster Charles Keating and flew on his private jet. In the US, this humble, modest woman only got the best medical treatment that wealthy people can buy. Support was never a bad thing for her, of course. One investigation found that the Vatican Bank, aka the Institute for the Works of Religion, had one mammoth account in her name. It said that the account was worth billions, and had she one day just decided to make equally mammoth withdrawals, the bank would have been on its knees. If that's not enough to suspend us on this thin ice we're skating on, she was also called a racist. Well, actually a white savior type of racist who pitied a people that could not save themselves and needed her as a benefactor in chief. She was of course clapped on by giddy white people who thought their clapping helped those poor brown people, while not thinking too much about the details and genesis of widespread abject poverty. As for the Western media with its decades-long grandstanding of Mother Teresa, it too, say the critics, played a part in a kind of white colonialism. After her death, even NPR gave credence to her performance of a real-life bona fide miracle, writing, "Hardcore rationalists would not be likely to see such cases as evidence of a miracle, even while acknowledging they have no alternative explanation." As was soon pointed out, you don't have to be a hardcore rationalist to believe nuns don't make terminal brain abscesses disappear with a flick of a wrist. But this was all part of the myth, and it seemed almost everyone was in on it. Can you blame Mother Teresa for that? Well, in her private diaries, she wrote about her doubts and emptiness and darkness. But that never stopped her forcing a ticket to heaven on people or demanding women should not have the right to make choices about their own bodies. We'll leave you with a question someone once asked her. They asked if poor people should have to endure their suffering. Her response was, "I think it's very beautiful for the poor to accept their lot, to share it with the Passion of Christ. I think the world is being much helped by the suffering of the poor people." Now, you need to watch The Exorcism of St. Mother Teresa, or for something of a different nature, 13 places no one's allowed to ever visit.
So let's go ahead.
Learn about crypto and get paid as you learn with Coinbase Earn.
Quick. And let's discuss the thing at hand. So basically, as you should know, that they shined Mother Teresa up. They shined up real nice, made her look like something that she wasn't. And the only thing Mother Teresa was down with your local government to open up places where kids could be raped, make sure anybody who wasn't white got no help, and of course eventually died off as she collected millions of billions of dollars to the point that she had so much of the bank that if she even took out a good lump sum, the bank would collapse. And she did not pay not one doctor, not one nurse to help none of these poor people who happened to be black. At least that's what they like to call us, right? She was not a saint. She was nothing more than a she-devil. But her butt, her silly butt, your local government shined her up real nice. Prepped up on TV and told you a good lie about as long as she stayed down with the program, and she used to deal with terrorists on top of that and dictators. Now, your government told these farmers to burn their crops and paid them to do it, and your government in the last couple of years have got rid of a whole lot of stuff that helps grow food. And they have put certain things in place that's not making food get to where it needs to go, the food that is there. And They're not allowing certain boats to come across or towards the shore to have food. And they want to start a war with Russia. These people are starting a famine, a worldwide famine on purpose, at the same time trying to start World War III. They lied overseas and had a newspaper saying that Russia attacked Ukraine. And their Putin president had to come out and say that's a lie. We ain't attacking nobody. They're lying. They want war with Russia so bad that they can taste it. And Putin knows it. Don't trust them. Canned goods, supplies, seeds, wilderness. Peace and love.